Okay, good morning, everyone. So what I'd like to do for the first maybe half an hour is just go over what I would consider to be super basics, just so that I can start to understand where you are. I know Dan was here and gave you some intro stuff. I know you've had some social media stuff. I know you've had some market entry stuff, I hope. So I want to see if I can understand where you are right now. And then we're going to do something called an unconference, sort of. Have any of you been to an unconference? Okay, one person.
What kind of conference?
Unconference. The rest of you need to get out more. Rock on. An unconference is kind of, it's like a conference where everybody gets together to talk about certain topics under some general themed banner, but the audience decides what topics will be covered dynamically. So it's not just that the speaker comes up and talks at you, it's that everybody gets a chance to participate and say, these are the topics that are most important to us. Now, this is a structured workshop put on by the government, so I'm obligated to give you X number of hours of stuff, but I want to make sure that it's the right stuff. So what I've done is I've brought all of my material, and I have certain topics that I think are extremely important. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, as things come up, as questions come up, things that are relevant to your startup, and you say like, this is something I'd really like to cover. I'd like to go much deeper into B2B content marketing. Then I'm going to ask you guys to write that down, put it on the board, and we're all going to decide together what's the most important things to cover. Make sense? Yeah. Cool. So can we start with a short game?
Sure.
Perfect. Good enthusiasm. All right. So I know you guys have heard lean ad infinitum. I assume most of you have been in accelerator programs before. I know that you have seen this game before, so you can just zip it. I want to know, I just want to make sure that we all understand the basics of lean, so I'm going to give you a quick game to play. This is a group guessing game. Okay. Uh-oh? You don't like guessing? It's very simple. I'm going to think of a kind of rule. It's kind of like an algorithm that relates three numbers to one another. And all I want you guys to do is guess the rule. Maybe play this twice. It's very, very short. All you have to do is guess the rule. It's a rule that relates three numbers to one another. I will give you the first three numbers that exemplify the rule to start with. Okay? You have two options. Okay? Number one, you can guess the rule, in which case I'll tell you yes or tell you no. Or you can give me three numbers, and I'll tell you if those numbers fit the rule and don't fit the rule. But you win the game by guessing the three numbers. Now, normally I bring like a t-shirt or something as a prize. I do have something that's slightly different from a t-shirt, which I hope you will enjoy. But it'll be a very interesting prize. Let me put it like that. I had to pack for a month, so I couldn't pack so many t-shirts in my bag. I did wear, however, my true startup t-shirt, by the way. So this is I normally only wear that for judging startup weekends, but I had to do the laundry last night. So, okay, you ready? Basically makes sense? So just guess the rule. That's the primary goal here, is to guess the rule. So your first three numbers are, the rule for today is, okay, so it's, the first three numbers will be 2, 4, 8. What's the rule?
Multiply.
Multiply by anything in particular?
Multiply by 2.
Multiply by 2, not the rule. 2 plus what?
The same amount. 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 4 is 8.
Okay, you're making true statements. What's the rule?
Multiply with the previous number.
Multiply with the previous number, not the rule.
Add the previous number.
Add the previous number, not the rule.
Add the same number.
Add the same number, not the rule.
No rules.
Not the rule. Good try.
What's the next number?
That's a question, that's not the next rule. So you can either guess the rule or you can give me three numbers.
Random number.
That is not the rule. Good guess also, though. Clearly there's deep suspicion already. You think I'm trying to trick you. I think you're trying to trick me. I don't get a croissant. I get the smallest cup of tea in the world.
They're all big.
Where did you get that one?
I also
Oh, man.
3, 6, 12.
3, 6, 12 fits the rule. I thought you guys all went through accelerator
5,
programs.
10, 20.
5, 10, 20 fits the rule.
Okay, so we have the pattern.
20, 40, 80 fits the rule. You guys have all done some lean startup stuff, right? Yes? No?
Yep.
Okay, so use it.
6 times bigger, yeah?
2 times bigger, not the rule. It is not. It's my rule.
But I disagree.
You can disagree all you want, but reality ultimately sets the rules. So you might disagree that your product is in fact awesome, but if nobody buys it, that's your problem, not reality's. 100% growth, not the rule. I can do this for the next 8 hours if you don't get this, so you guys better start speeding up.
You mentioned the product.
Huh?
You mentioned the product.
I mentioned the product. What does that have to do with the rule?
Doubling the number of our customers.
I hope you're doubling the number of your customers has nothing to do with this game. This game is about the numbers relating to one another. It doesn't relate to like the stock market price or anything.
Okay. Exponential growth.
Not the rule. Also, 248 wouldn't be exponential. How are you guys trying to solve this? This is the easy one, by the way. How are you trying to solve this? Just talk me through this. What are you thinking about?
Logic says it's, at least by looking at it, that the numbers, 2, 4, 8 went through, 3, 6, 9 went through, 5, 10, 20 went through. So logic says that it's, add the same amount on it and then add it again, or then multiply by 2, or, so there is mathematical logic is there. Now it's the question, you are probably not using the kind of logic we are thinking of.
I'm not trying to trick you, so if you give me the same rule with different words, I will still give you credit for it. So it's not like I want you to express the rule in scientific notation or anything like that.
What about a sequence 1 to 15?
1 to 15
Yeah.
fits the rule.
1 to 15 fits the rule.
Correct.
Probably 1 to 100 million also fits the rule.
1 to 100 million fits the rule.
So three numbers.
Every second number is bigger than the previous one.
3 numbers, not the rule. You got the rule. Congratulations, sir. Say it again.
Every next number is bigger than the previous one.
And I have for you as a prize, I can't even open your prize, but it is a unicorn horn. So you get to be the unicorn for today. Which I hope is the best possible present you could get as a startup. Please, if you would. Oh, that is going to be beautiful. Nice. That is very elegant. Okay, cool.
But that is not actually a rule, is it?
It's a rule.
Because that rule doesn't allow you to guess next number.
It's a rule that relates 3 numbers to one another, not a rule that is a permanent, never-ending sequence. All right, so look, talk me through this again. How did you go about doing this? What was the first thing you did as a group?
Try to find a lot. Looking for
Right, just find the
patterns.
pattern.
Okay, you tried to find the pattern in a data set of 1.
No, we try to find the pattern by proposing next patterns to see if they fit the model.
That's what you did later. The first thing you did as a group was you started saying, well, I see a limited data set, a 1 item, and then you immediately assumed that the pattern that fits that item must apply to the rest of the world, which is essentially what we typically do as entrepreneurs, right? I have sold something to my B2B customer here in Estonia, and the customers in Germany must be exactly identical, yeah? That's normal thinking for us. It's normal thinking for us as human beings. The next thing you guys did was you continued guessing. So the first thing somebody guessed was double it, and then the second thing somebody guessed was like times 2, which is another way of saying double it. And then you guys guessed exponential, which doesn't even fit the data. And then what else did you guys guess?
Add the same number.
You guessed add the same number. Nobody guessed even numbers, which is kind of interesting. Most people normally go in that direction. And then you started putting in numbers. Okay, so that's a good start. Did anybody actually write down the data?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a very good idea. We should be writing down the data whenever it comes. So you started putting in numbers. And which numbers, what was the first set of numbers you put in? Was 3, 6, 3, 6, 12, right?
5, 10, 20.
5, 10, 20, and then 10, 20, 40.
Yes.
So what were you guys doing essentially?
Testing.
Testing what?
The rule.
The rule. Which rule?
Your rule.
No. You were testing your rule. You weren't testing my rule. If you were testing my rule, you would have put in different numbers. If you're testing your rule, you thought the rule was double it, even though I told you guys the number was not double it. And then you put in numbers that doubled to see if it would fit the rule, which of course it did. Right? And you continue doing that. This is what we call confirmation bias. You guys have heard of that before? Okay. So confirmation bias is the reason that Republicans in America right now watch Fox News and vote for Donald Trump and believe everything he's saying. Sorry. My apologies on behalf of America right now. Are there any other Americans here? Okay, I'll just take the blame for that one then. And it's the same reason why Democrats watch MSNBC. Okay, we look for information that confirms our previously existing bias. So it's not unusual for you to put in data and look for something that confirms your pre-existing beliefs, but we should try not to do that. If you wanted to actually make progress, you would try and do something else. We would try and do something which we would call falsifying our hypothesis. Right? So if you thought the rule was double it, then the best thing to do to confirm that is put in 3 numbers that do not double. 1, 2, 3. In which case you should have gotten the answer no does not fit the rule, and then you would know that your hypothesis is incorrect. What were you thinking when you started putting in numbers? You put in like 1, 2, 15 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought something like that. If they don't double, then perhaps there's some other sequence. Perhaps some other sequence will also fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the rule. They
Right.
fit, but yeah.
Right? So you didn't even have a specific idea, so you did something different, what we would call generative research. Okay? And you just started trying to get more data, like different types of data. Let's try looking in different places, see what happens. So you might not have known what the rule is, but you're like, well, let's just try something totally different and see what the answers start coming out of. That's called generative research, when you don't have a specific hypothesis. If you have a specific hypothesis, you can test it by trying to falsify it. If you don't have a specific hypothesis, we need to generate information. All right, so what about trying to falsify things? If I wanted to prove that penguins can't fly, what's the best way to test that? Throw penguins off a cliff. That is absolutely correct. So if I throw a penguin off the cliff, have I proved that penguins can't fly? No. No? Why not?
This particular penguin.
Yeah, that particular penguin might have a gammy wing or something like that. So what should you do?
Perhaps under other conditions.
Throw more penguins.
Perhaps in other conditions they might fly.
Perhaps under other conditions they might fly. There's a lot of different ways to rationalize why that particular penguin might not have been particularly enthusiastic. Maybe he had a death wish. Maybe he just broke up with his girlfriend. I have no idea. Right, so science says that we try and disprove things, not prove them, right? Because you can never prove a hypothesis. You can only fail to disprove it so often that that you just kind of give up and say, like, good enough. You know, after you throw off 100 penguins, you could throw off 1,000, you could throw off 100,000, you could throw off 1,000,000 penguins. But at a certain point, you run out of penguins. And at that point, the question is kind of silly, because obviously penguins can't fly because you've killed all the penguins. Right? That's not useful. Right? There's such a thing as overconfidence. But what we need to do is we need to have a certain level of confidence that makes it sufficient for us as startups to proceed. Okay, so I think actually that's all I'm going to talk about, the generals of lean. I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself because I'm still a little bit sleepy. My name's Tristan, in case anybody didn't catch that. I've worked with a lot of startups. This is kind of this is an American necessities. You always have to have lots of slides with your logos on it, so I have that. I don't want to go too deep into lean because, again, you've already heard it, okay? But I do want you guys to be thinking of it and keeping it in your minds because it's relevant at every stage of your company. I do work with startups most of the time, but I also work with very, very large corporations like Swisscom, Statoil, these sorts of companies, right? And we're still applying lean to those companies because they have startups inside them, but also at scale. They need to reprove and revalidate because their markets are constantly changing. And it gets very dangerous for companies to get stuck in their previously existing beliefs of last year. 2 years ago, no big company would be advertising on Instagram, or maybe 3 years ago now. Now it's almost a necessity. So we have to keep up to date with the market, especially if you're entering new markets. So just to cover the basics of lean, what does MVP stand for? Or sorry, what does it mean? That's what it stands for. What does it mean?
You build the minimum.
You just said the exact same words again.
That you don't finish it before you actually launch it.
You build the bare minimum.
You start
of your
testing it
product
as soon
that
as
you can
possible.
sell it.
Start testing as soon as possible.
You build the minimum product that you can sell.
Build the smallest thing you can sell.
Sale.
Same.
Proof of concept, kind of.
Ish. So I'm down with a lot of that stuff. I agree with most of those statements, but as far as I'm concerned, MVP is just a buzzword. What's important about that concept is we test, so I like what you said, but we test, we're not really testing our product. So it's not so much to me about the product, it's about what's risky. Okay? All of your startups have a lot of risk in them. Might be a risk of entering a new market, might be a risk of your existing market, might be risks about your value proposition, your suppliers, your cost structure, your revenue structure, your pricing model. It could be any of those things. Okay? What we really want to be talking about is not what product do we need to build, but what do we need to learn. Okay? So it's whatever you need to build in order to answer a certain question, okay, to help you learn. That's it. That's all that's important. If you just build something, so if you might build the most amazing product in the world, and maybe you did kind of some sort of exercise and made it as minimum as possible, okay? And then you point to it and you say, aha, this is my MVP. So no, that's not your MVP. Until this interacts with these customers, you have learned nothing, right? Therefore, it's not your MVP. Right? MVP should have 4 basic parts. You guys have all done the business model canvas, right? Yes?
Yes,
You swear? You promise, right?
absolutely.
Okay. So you have the customer. And you have the product. And those two things must intersect. And that is called, ideally, that's what? You have a product, you have a market, and you have product market fit, right? That's what you're going for. So you have to have at least those two things. If you created a product and it doesn't actually touch the customer, done. Okay, you're not accomplishing anything. So in order to get the product to the customer, what do I need? You guys said you did the business model canvas, right? Sales, channel, some sort of way to get it there, right? You have, what do you have? Osterwalder draws a little truck here. I'm not very good at drawing right now, so I'll draw a terrible truck. Right? You need a channel. And then what else do you need? Feedback, right? So you need some sort of relationship with that customer in order to bring the knowledge back into your product. As the one thing I don't like about the business model canvas is Osterwalder draws the arrow the other way. It is a way of delivering information and knowledge to your customer, like customer support. It's actually not useful. At this stage of your product, the customer relationship is your channel to get information back from the customer about your product. That's the most important thing. Okay, so you've got to have those 4 things in an MVP. Other than that, I don't really care too much about the jargon or the terminology of lean startup. It's really not that important to me. I do care about those 3 basic principles. Did Dan go over those, or did somebody go over those? I'm going to say no. Yes? No? Haven't I seen you somewhere before? No?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Some of you guys look very familiar to me. Maybe it's just because I saw everybody's profile pic on the site. That's probably it. Okay. Right, so principle number 1 of lean startup or lean thinking, forget about startups, ignorance. Yes, we start with what we don't know. That's the most important thing. So most of you have customers, yes? Raise your hand if you got customers. Okay. So you know something about your target audience. You've sold something to someone. You have some information. Now, it could be that you don't have a lot of customers and you're still struggling to understand them a little bit more. Could be that you're entering a new market and you're trying to figure out if the new market customers are exactly like the ones you already have. Okay? But there are things that you don't know or are unsure about. Okay? That's where we start. From there, we use perspective, right? We need to go out and get information from outside the building, from running some sort of test or experiment. And the third thing is, of course, the famous build, measure, learn loop. You guys are all familiar with that. What are the two most important things about build, measure, learn? Nothing? That it works? What? And why is that important? I mean, what's the difference between that and doing the same cycle but taking a year to do it? If I have like €1,200,000 and I have a burn rate of €100,000 per month, that means my runway is what? Now I'm just testing your morning math skills. Yes, 1 year. And if it takes me 1 year to take that product to finish building that product, how many chances do I have to succeed as a company? Zero. Correct. Awesome. That is like the first time anybody's gotten it on number one. Most people say 1. Right? You have 0, right? Because
You will run out of money.
You run out of money.
Your product is ready to ship.
Perfect. Right? Make sense? Okay, so instead, we would rather take the same amount of money and we would rather burn it in huge piles. If you can take the same amount of money and burn $40,000 per day in a small team running 1,000 Google AdWords tests, as long as you can build something per day and learn something about your customer, you now have your runway is now what? 40,000 per day, 1,000.
1 month.
1 month, correct. Okay, but you have how many chances to succeed?
0 and 1.
I'm going to go with 29. 30, 29. So it's not about the money. Okay, that's not relevant. Some of you have more money than others. Some of you are burning cash farther than others. What we want to do is our runway, the true way to measure your runway is how fast can we learn, how many cycles can we go through in time before we run out of cash. Like that's what's relevant. So you might have a lot of cash, you might be burning it very slowly, but if you're learning very slowly, you have less of a chance to succeed. What's the second thing about build, measure, learn that's important? You should know all this stuff.
You said to be quiet.
Oh, for the first game, you don't have to keep quiet the whole day.
Seriously, don't encourage it.
Oh yeah? So you're going to give me trouble? About build, measure, learn, what's the second most important thing about this?
You have to adopt the change.
Certainly. I'll go with that. That's important. I'm sorry I'm eating during this. I had no breakfast. What I think is very important that people sometimes forget is that this loop is actually a bad idea. You shouldn't do this. If this is your company's strategy, this is not going to work. This is the functional equivalent of getting like, the Brits in the room might know this, you get 1,000 typewriters, you get 1,000 monkeys, and you bang away at the typewriters as fast as possible, and you hope to eventually get Shakespeare. Right? That's possible. Not very likely. If you happen to have 1,000 monkeys and you happen to have 1,000 typewriters and you have nothing better to do with your time, then okay, maybe. I mean, build, measure, learn was the type of loop that the Yo app went through. Everybody have the Yo app at some point? Do you guys know what the Yo app is? Yeah? Right, so an application that would text the word yo to a friend. Really awesome. It actually took more clicks to use the Yo app to text the word yo to somebody than it did to just text the word yo. Right? Super popular. Now, if it's going to take you, if it's extremely cheap to build something and test it, okay, that might work. But it's a very haphazard way of going about your life. What we'd much rather do is go backwards through this loop. We'd rather start over here, again, with ignorance and say, what are we trying to learn? What's our hypothesis? then what data, what information would actually help us learn that? Is it qualitative data? Is it quantitative data? Do I need a lot of data? Do I need a little data? And then, and only then, can I figure out what I need to build. And again, by build, I mean this entire thing. You might be experimenting on just your channel, in which case you can just build that. But if you're trying to experiment on your product, you better have all of this. In some cases, you might just be building the sales channel so that you can go and have customer conversations. That's it. And then I can go forwards through the loop. So really, you're just going backwards and forwards through this loop again and again and again. And this is, of course, going to apply to what I hope is going to be our focus for the next 2 days, which is selling more stuff, right? That's our main goal for the next 2 weeks, is sell more stuff. So how much runway do you guys have? Who has over 1 year of runway? Yes, awesome. Maybe-ish. 9 months? You can raise your hand again if you said 1 year. Okay, 6 months? 6 months, okay, a little bit more. 3 months? Okay, who has less than 3 months? Okay. You guys need to move very fast. Maybe we should make sure that you guys are the first 2 companies we talk to on Monday. Okay? That's super important. It's very hard to do this stuff when you're under time pressure.
No, we have.
You have more than
Yeah,
3
yeah.
months, okay.
Easy now.
So you can be the first ones. 3 months is kind of an okay amount of time to do some stuff and maybe get follow-up funding. Shorter than that is really rough.
But good pressure, yeah.
Good pressure. Yeah, pretend you have 3 months. There's actually a rule in, it's a rule in my current company where I'm kind of slacking off doing a lot of consulting and accelerator stuff, but the current rule in our company is that if we have over 6 months of cash left, we give everybody a raise, and that immediately makes us have less than 6 months of cash left. Right? It's kind of a good forcing factor. And if it's like less than 3 months left, then we panic. Okay, so that's all I really want to go over of lean. Is that okay? I can go past that now. I don't need to go into any more than that.
Where's the validate stage? Like, we have an experiment, don't we retest if the, let's say, results are reliable or not?
Yes, yes and no. So right, this is back to the penguins. Okay? You and your business are going to have certain risks, okay, and some of them are going to be very risky. Some of them are not going to be very risky. What we want to do is we cannot get 100% certainty. Like, we are not 100% certain that the theory of evolution is true, or that Einstein's general relativity is true. We've just tried them so often that it seems very unlikely. I mean, everybody's phone and computer works on the principles of quantum mechanics and general relativity, thanks to GPS, but we're not really certain that they're true. We just tried enough that it seems not so risky anymore. Now, for your case, you might have tested a channel, and you might test it with a relatively low sample size. Right? You might have talked to 10 of your customers in Germany, and it turns out they all read Der Spiegel. Right? You guys know Der Spiegel? Any Germans here? No, there's no Germans here? I don't know. I thought this might be an international group. Is everybody here Estonian? No. No, okay. So let's say we talk to 10 customers and we have some open-ended customer discovery interviews, and it turns out they all read Der Spiegel religiously every day. So we might think, well, maybe that's a good channel. Now, 10 customers is not a very big sample size, okay? But the margin of error on 10 customers, I don't know what that is. Let's say it's plus or minus 50%. Well, worst case scenario, at least 50% of people read Der Spiegel every day. Now, if you're going to blow $1 million, I'd say that's not sufficient certainty. Okay? But if you're just looking for your next 10 customers, it's probably safe to spend a couple $100s on an advertisement there. When you look at your business model canvas, you might have, did you circle the riskiest thing at any point? No? What do you use the business model canvas for? Is that just something somebody forced you to do? Yes, kind of? Okay, so you didn't like use it for any sort of risk prioritization? No. No? Okay, maybe I'll force you guys to do that. So ideally in the business model canvas, you're using it to identify risks. Okay, there might be risks in your key partners, there might be risks in your customer, there might be risks in your relationship, could be anything. What we're trying to do is we're trying to identify the largest area of risk. So it could be the biggest risk is your customer segment. You go and test that. Maybe you test it with qualitative interviews. And you test it enough so that it's still risky, but it's not the biggest risk right now. Now the biggest risk is, well, can we get a sufficient feature set to service at least those first 10 customers? Product is a bigger risk. Then you test that and you manage to sell it to 5 of those customers. Okay, less risky. Now the biggest risk is getting more customers. So we go to the channel. So you might bounce back and forth between different types of experimentation. And at the end of the day, you have to judge what is a sufficient level of risk for you. And so I'm not going to criticize you guys if you say, I don't want to do lean startup and I just want to build something for a year and then launch it and hope that it works. That's cool. That's not the way I do things, but you're absolutely entitled to do that. It's totally up to you. You might be a millionaire and you don't need to worry about it. That's fine. Right? Bill Gates and Elon Musk, they can afford to put $5 billion into something random that they just think is fun. Okay? Elon Musk is blowing like, what, $20 million every time he sends a rocket up? It's totally cool. But even Elon Musk knows the goal, the principles of lean. So what is Tesla doing? Oh, sorry, not Tesla. What is SpaceX doing that's lean? They're sending rockets up into space. How is that lean? Okay, either I'm very sleepy or I'm not making any sense.
They're experimenting. Experimenting.
How are they experimenting?
Sending it up and to see what
Keeping
happens.
fingers crossed that it won't blow up.
Yeah, pretty much.
And measuring data while doing this.
Sure, but in principle, again, the principle is speed, right? If you just build a rocket and you send it up and then the rocket goes into space, that is very expensive per test, right? They're creating a platform with reusable rockets which will lower the cost per iteration. That's what they're doing. If they get that, their cost to learn is going to go down and they're going to be far, far better and far faster at learning and becoming more effective than every other company. That's what they're doing. When big companies try and do this, generally they're looking to lower the cost of innovation. Like that's their primary goal. They might do it using some lean methods like whatever, customer interviews, something like that. They might try and do it by building a platform on which they can iterate quickly. How many of you have A/B testing set up? Okay, maybe a quarter of you. That's a platform for innovation. If you invested in the infrastructure, that is not helping you learn anything, right? Building the A/B testing infrastructure or plugging in Optimizely is not helping you proceed in your business, but it is lowering your cost per innovation. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So in a nutshell, you suggest always to take small experiments systematically, testing them with a small sample in our company and see what works, what doesn't work, so we can play the odds and take less risks.
Yes. I mean, that's your job as a startup. And your job as a startup is not to build a product, right?
What if we deal with different kind of cultures, like different countries? So what is applicable in Germany it's not applicable in, let's say, Taiwanese.
Correct.
In this case, what we should do? Okay, we should try different kind of, let's say, experiments, but this will take us much time, much effort, much input.
Yeah. So when we're looking at choosing which market to enter, we will hopefully be choosing one with the least risk and the most rewards. If we look at those two things and decide, okay, Germany is less risky than Taiwan because, first of all, it's within flying distance. That's a help, right? And the culture isn't quite as different as the culture in Taiwan. I've lived in both of those countries. Taiwan's very, very different, entirely different design appeal. So we might first attack Germany. And when you enter Germany, there are going to be, again, certain risks in that. And we want to say, what are the small steps that we can do to eliminate those risks? Like, that's your job. Your job as an entrepreneur is not to take risks. It's to create a stable and sustainable and repeatable business model. That's the only way that you're going to get profitable. It's the only way you're going to get a lot more funding. Okay? The big dollars, when you guys go out and get funding, if you want to get $5 million, $10 million, $50 million, people don't give that money to highly risky ventures. They give that money when like it's kind of obvious that it works. Oh, your cost for acquiring a customer, your CAC is $5, and the net present value of your customer lifetime is $10. This is an obvious company I should send money to. There's no question that I should give that company $10 million. There's no risk in it for me. Venture capitalists give money primarily, first and foremost, to companies that are going to benefit from just money. There's different type of VCs that will invest and try and give something like knowledge or networking or connections. Okay. Good enough? Any other questions just about Lean? I'm going to touch upon this throughout the next few days. These are principles that I do in regards to anything, but that's the basics. So what I'd like to do then is, Callum, I'm going to ask for your help to just write down a whole bunch of stuff quickly.
You see my handwriting?
No, I haven't, so that somewhat scares me. But what I want to do now is I have certain topics that I definitely want to cover, like B2B sales. Have you guys done a lot of B2B sales training? Yes? Oh, great. Maybe we don't need to cover that. Right, so there's certain topics that I think we need to cover, like B2B sales, customer stakeholder mapping, things like that. Like how to do complex sales in a very advanced and serious way. And there are certain topics that I think are perhaps less important, like customer personas. I hope we don't have to do. I think they're really fun, but we probably don't need to do them. I assume you guys have some sort of segmentation if you already have customers. So I'm going to write down all of my topics, not on that.
Not on that.
No, I'm going to write them all on,
Post-it notes.
well, or pieces of paper. For today, pieces of paper. I'm going to ask also you guys to take 5 minutes, and I want you to write down what are all the topics that you think are absolutely critical for your business to succeed. You can write down a topic, like sales or technical support. You can also write down questions. So if your broad question like, how do I enter the Taiwanese market? Okay, I might happen to have a presentation on that, or I might happen to know something about that. And then we're going to post them all up on this wall, or let's use that wall. And then we're going to vote on them. All I want you to do now, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and I want you to write down anywhere from 5 to 10 topics that are really important for your company. Don't use the Post-it notes, use large pieces of paper, and please try and write large. Here's another piece of tape. Here, just rip little pieces off this one. It's going to be much easier. Do I have any designers in the room? Any design thinking? Are you good at design thinking? Like, can you sort a whole bunch of Post-it notes into groups? Yes, you can. Come on up. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to help sort this into clusters. Okay? So if somebody writes advertising and somebody writes marketing, put those next to each other. Okay. Somebody writes the same thing in different words, just put them right on top of another.